Hi, good afternoon. So we're here today basically to share about whatever it takes on the deep tech journey. We talk a lot about startups, entrepreneurship, innovation, and there's always this thing about deep tech is really hard. And to get researcher to become an entrepreneur, that is even harder. So here we are today. We have Howard, Dr. Howard, that runs the Smart Innovation Center, has been on both sides of the fence as a researcher as well as doing startup. Great friends with ASAT Central when we do a lot of programs together as well, from deep tech bootcamp, so on and so forth. Massimo, someone that we actually seen his early conception of idea as a researcher in SimTech to he finally spin off with the good companionship and buddy of budding innovation. I see Brett Grubin online as well. And last but not least, we have Sascha from researcher looking into likes, measurements, spectrometers. The three of them have fantastic experience as a researcher and that journey to change the mindset towards an entrepreneur and to go on with it, the courage, and what else behind the scene that is not being told. So we're here today to start it off. I pass the mic to Massimo. Massimo, you ready to take on the mic?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony, for the introduction, and thank you for having me as a speaker in this event. It's my pleasure to share a bit about REVIVO Biosystems and my experience, my short experience as a research turned entrepreneur. Now, before I go and say what we do at REVIVO, I want to share a little bit how the whole thing started. So this started as a project in A-Star as a collaboration between Simtech and IMB. I was very focused on a skin-on-a-chip development. Following that development, we managed to have grants from SMART and Accelerate to bring this technology forward to a more mature stage. And this year, we actually spun off and incorporated REVIVO Biosystems. We licensed the technology from A-Star, and we started the service side of our business. Now at REVIVO, what we really want to do is that we are on a mission to remove cruelty, increase efficiency, and enable personalization in the chemical, cosmetic, and pharmaceutical research industries. Now this ecosystem is under enormous pressure because the cost of R&D has become unbearable for the main players. They need to win the market with safe and effective products in a faster and more ethical way. Indeed, more than 100 million animals are still used and many are killed in lab tests every year. Now, consumers and a whole tide of regulation are turning against animal testing. In 2013, the EU banned animal testing for cosmetic product development, and last year, the US Environmental Protection Agency has decided to phase out all animal testing by 2035. And yet, corporates are doing it all wrong, because there are huge genetic differences between animals and humans, because the alternatives to animal testing they use are not realistic and efficient enough, and because they rely on non-targeted approach based on large population studies rather than on individual characteristics. Now, traditional alternatives to animal testing use human biopsies or 3D cell cultures grown in the lab, but they are based on static culture processes and tedious manual operations, and the industry is clearly not satisfied about these methodologies. Now imagine if you could load human tissue biopsies or grow advanced 3D cell culture in a system that can mimic the function of the blood flow. In so doing, we would create 4D tissue models, the most realistic human tissue models you can get in the lab. This is why we believe our technology is game-changing, because with our patented microfluidic devices, we can create conditions as close as possible to the ones in the human body. This system is also automated, making testing procedures more efficient. So it's not only highly realistic, but it also enables up to 10 times saving in manpower and biomaterials. Now, this is the type of revolution we want to bring is it follows a certain trend and goes from 2D to 3D development of cell culture. And what we bring in is a 4D. And I'm a bit of an art lover, so what it would actually correspond to in art, in painting, is a bit like going from two-dimensional, no perspective painting to a revolution from Giotto and the Renaissance time. And after that, the next big revolution was Picasso with the Cubism and the introduction of the fourth dimension in painting. Now, having this realistic and efficient platform we had developed in place this is actually the key enabler to then move towards the development of personalized medicine and personalized cosmetic. So patients and consumers' own cells can be used in our organ-on-a-chip device and as a personalized tools for developing for studying your particular biological response. So imagine no side effects, fine-tuned customized dosage, and targeted selection of products to be used. Now, this is a highly scalable models because we start as a beachhead custom with the skincare market, but we aim to establish ourselves strongly as a brand in this market. And then moving forward, we will explore all the tissue models needed in the whole personal care and in the pharmaceutical industry. And if you think that for each tissue models, you can create also disease models and personalize one, then you can start picturing the scalability of this technology. The way we operate is that we have a fee-for-service business side, but we're also developing the products so that we can sell them to contract research organization and academic research lab. And we have already started generating revenues from our service models because from large cosmetic and chemical companies. Now, remaining in the theme of the talk, which is whatever it takes. So what does it take to switch from a researcher to an entrepreneur? In my opinion, you need to be a little bit of a fool. I mean, one of my favorite reading was Erasmus of Rotterdam, The Praise of Folly. And it really says that you have to be a little bit of a fool to create something bigger than yourself. And there is this nice quote from a movie, Wall Street. It says, what is the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now, this is good news for a researcher because that's basically really what a scientist or a researcher does every day when he goes to the lab. You try to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if it's actually a good thing to become an entrepreneur, to be a researcher. You're already on the right path. The next thing I believe it takes is patience and resilience. You have to understand basically to make peace with the fact that it takes time and it takes, really resilience. You have to really be not just persistent, but also be able to act fast when needed. So yes, Rome wasn't built in a day. A startup is not built in a day. It takes time, but you also have to be able to, let's say, build the Colosseum overnight if the emperor asks you to do it. And in this case, the emperor is your customer. The third thing is endurance. Now, my co-founder, Bert Groben, he likes to say that entrepreneurship is not a sprint, but it is a marathon. And I believe for researcher, it is actually more like an Ironman race indeed. Now, I got inspired from Bert to be an Ironman as well. But what you really do when you do an Ironman race is that you start with swimming, then you have a transition, and then when you actually switch gears from swim to bike, and then you have this 180 kilometers bike race. It feels like it never ends. And then you have another transition where you actually change the gear from biking to running, and then you have this run. And in my idea, when you do your R&D project as a researcher that is laid the background of your startup, it's really you just done the swimming part of your roadmap. You have to then change your mindset and switch from a researcher to a founder and get the tools that allows you to be more business oriented. So you can build the startup. And this is really a long run. It takes a lot of time. And I am just at the beginning of this race. And I expect that the next phase will be to switch from a founder to a businessman, where you actually have to start running towards an exit strategy. And the good thing is, while the Ironman you run on your own, and the marathon you run on your own, this experience you do it with a team. And I'm very happy to have a great team with me with my co-founders, Sriram Gopu and Bert Groben. I've worked with them already for more than 5 to 6 years, and we have a great chemistry between us. And with this, I would like to thank you all for the attention and for the opportunity to share my experience. And now I will pass the cam and the voice to Sascha, who will tell you about Attonics. Just a second. Stop share.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Massimo, for that nice talk, and thanks to everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak and to introduce Attonics systems and the journey of Attonics systems, which I called here From the Lab to the Market Journey. My name is Sascha Heussier, and I'm in Singapore for quite some time. I came here as a researcher, and I'm happy to share my side of the story to the entrepreneurship and how I transitioned from a researcher towards an entrepreneur. So here's a short outline of my talk. I will give a quick introduction to what Attonics is about and what the technology is about behind our name. And then I really want to focus on the Attonics story as it is, because I think it is really the translation of taking some research work and then pushing that towards a product development. And I would like to close this this introduction by the key learnings and the difficulties that you're facing there. And I hope that my experience will help you to see a bit clearer of what it takes. And I'm not spending too much time on the technology and more on the story and the transition from really this research work towards something that is then a product placed in the market. So shortly about the introduction, oops, that was too quick, sorry. What is Attonics about? So what we have developed is a sort of a light chip. It's a small glass plate that has been structured down to the nanometer scale. And that glass chip is placed in front of a detector. And whenever light falls through that glass chip onto the detector, what we can then infer back is the spectrum of light that illuminates that chip. And that is, in terms of technology, it's a huge step forward. What we have managed is we have taken an interferometer, that's a standard or workhorse type of instrument. We have shrunk that down to the size of a little chip that then combined with the detector or any sort of camera allows you to convert the camera into a spectrophotometer that then can allow you to do spectral analysis on the go in the field. The advantage of these kind of devices is it's extreme compact, very robust, low weight, it's a very high speed, everything is static, nothing is moving. And it brings the cost down of spectroscopy systems to its absolute lowest. Our aim is there to bring spectroscopy closer towards the consumer market and to make it more efficient and more reliable, but also to open up new areas of applications for this kind of systems. So this is the technology behind it. But as I said, I want to concentrate more on really sharing that long story from really a lab work where you thought as a PhD student what you're gonna do, to what it translated to in the future and what we ended up with Attonics systems and the product market fit that we achieved then at the end. So my story in Singapore starts in 2005 when I came here as a PhD student, and my former boss put down a patent on the table. It was his own patent, and it was called grating structure having plurality of binary gratings. A beautiful concept, but no one knew how the hell can you produce such a device. It was a pure theoretical paper of how a structure should be built in order to build a very powerful small-scale spectroscopy system. So if I put that on a timeline on where we started and where we are today, started in 2005 with that concept idea, the start of a PhD thesis. And it took me personally, it took me 4 years before I first managed to demonstrate that this type of spectroscopy system works. We were able to showcase it, that we can detect single pulses of light with such a small static device. And based on this work, we were then granted a POC grant, and we demonstrated first FTIR. And FTIR, what that relates to is infrared spectroscopy systems. And our key performance indicator was there. We were able to capture the single pulse of a light burst in the infrared spectral range. That then further translated, we received an innovation grant. We built the first portable infrared system, but also we transitioned towards, okay, we went away from the infrared spectral side, also more towards the visible spectral side, because we knew, okay, there's some great interest if you combine spectroscopy with your conventional cameras that you have on your smartphones, everyone's carrying around. That would have a huge potential for future uses of spectroscopy or uses of spectroscopy that have not been explored before. Then, based on these two grants and the promising research work that we had done in 2015, we first incorporated Attonics Systems. We are founder of 3 teams. That is Philip von Pijn, the CEO of this company. It's myself taking the CTO role, and it's Herbert Moser, who is our advisor and co-founder, and who is the original inventor of this kind of technology. So, interestingly, we then that's what maybe will later come up in the discussions we'll have. We slowly started to drift away from the infrared spectral range, and I will explain that later as well, and moved towards the visible spectral range. In 2019, we did the second fundraising and established what we call the minimum viable product, something that I find a key milestone in the whole development cycle of a product launch. We managed to raise over $2 million. And then in late 2019, early 2020, we launched our first product into the market. And my key point that I want to share with you is my research concentrated on building the fastest infrared spectrometer to do extremely quick spectral sensing. And what we ended up with, then finally pushing into the market, has very little to do with what I started from. It's a visible spectrometer platform that now looks at applications such as cosmetics, where color sensing, color communications are key to a broad host of applications. So it is one part, one of the stories I want to share is often what we begin with is not what we end up with pushing into the market when we start building a startup or a business around a technology that we have developed. So with that, I want to just share a few key learnings and difficulties. That is my very personal own startup journey. It is key to me to understand what your startup is about. Concentrate on your key knowledges or your key knowledge. Find partners for missing fields and expertise. Do not try to solve everything yourself. That's for me a key learning. As a scientist, you often believe you can solve everything, and just given the time. Key learning there is you don't always have time, and you need to find the right partner. A major question for startups is the product market fit, and key is there to find the lowest hanging fruit and harvest that with a minimum viable product. This definition is something that will adjust over time, but it will help you to continue building the startup. Another very important learning that I witnessed is you need to have a working demo system as soon as possible. Now it really boils down to the need of someone needs to be able to touch and see and test your product. If you just have an idea and you're selling an idea, it's going to be a difficult ride. A key point is there to get demo systems out, get them tested. And another important finding is that's something as a researcher we also have to learn a little more. You have to listen carefully to potential customers, meet them as early as you can in person, establish personal contact, because this customer relationship takes much longer than we anticipate in most common cases. So further learnings in that journey are, like I said on the timeline that I'd introduced, is you have to pivot if necessary to zoom in on the best product market fit if you realize another option is easier to accomplish in a shorter time. That is something that is going along the line, think truth of what you can actually establish in a given time, and then find the shortest way towards that route. A key point is also you need to establish a good team. You need to find the members that are required for a missing know-how. Be flexible in your approach towards the customer. At the end of the day, we all need to find a way to sell your products. And another major point is stay positive in hard times. If you don't believe in your product, no one else will in this whole race. So go on with positivity, and you will find your way along. So that is my short summary of my journey. It takes, as you've seen on my timeline, from 2005 when I started with a PhD thesis, developing a concept, until 2020 when it finally materialized with a product launch. That's 15 years of hard work. So it takes whatever it requires, and you need time and tenacity to get there. So with that, I would like to hand back to Howard, and thank you for your time. So now I need to stop sharing. Okay.
Hi, Howard. Okay, I would also like to invite Massimo and Sascha on the screen for the panel discussion.
Okay.
Okay, Howard, it's your time now.
Okay, Susan, thank you very much. And Sascha and Massimo, thank you very much for sharing your journey as scientist entrepreneurs. I've had the honor to have watched both of you as you've moved along this journey. And I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into your experiences for the audience. Many people give the advice out that as a startup, you need to fail fast. And my experience as a CEO has been that's simply not true. Obviously, as you're trying to figure out your product market fit, as you're listening to the voice of the customer, you're going to be pivoting until you really find that correct product market fit. But once you analyze the market, once you've identified the target product profile, then it's when really tenacity picks in, where you really have to just persevere and drive forward. So I wanted you both to share, Sascha first, but a little bit about what your experience has been on both sides of the coin, both on pivoting and the need to pivot, but then also on the need for tenacity and for endurance to run the marathon race, as Massimo mentioned. So Sascha, I know you're both a little bit different in your journey. Sascha has been in it a little bit longer than Massimo, and Sascha, you've actually raised substantial amounts of money now, but maybe you could go first and explain, what's the difference between when you pivot and when you need to have tenacity.
Yeah, thanks, Howard, for that. I mean, as I said earlier in my presentation, we pivoted, and I think it's a natural thing. For us, it was like we started building infrared sensors because we believe from spectroscopy field of view that everyone will like these sensors, and there's a huge market for it. But then along the way, we realized, hey, infrared sensors are really difficult to purchase. It's a difficult sell because there are restrictions on the sale of these kind of sensors that are required for our spectrometers. So we shifted away from the spectroscopy-rich spectral band, the infrared, towards something that is easier to achieve and a better product market fit for what we believe is achievable within that startup. So pivoting was for us crucial to get closer and quicker to that market with the supply that was needed or that was available to us. And then what comes in next is that once you shift or you pivot around and you move to that closer product market fit, I absolutely agree with you in the sense that tenacity is key. Starting a startup is a very romantic idea initially because you think, okay, you have everything under control and you don't expect a lot of faults and fallbacks along the way. but they are there, they will come, and only through persistence you will understand the market, and you will know how to address it at a later point. And in the long run, there are so many little issues that come up, and only with dedicated work and persistence, you are able to solve them one by one and move forward to be able at the end of the day to launch a product into a market. So I think it is a romantic idea that you have a startup and you run out there without tenacity. It needs the commitment, it needs the persistence to solve all these individual problems that come up along the way, and they will come up, foreseeable or not. So it's a key to have that.
And Sascha, I imagine 2020 has been a horrible year with COVID and customers disappearing and markets drying up and investors being hard to find. Tell us a little bit about the tenacity that required to make it through this year. All startups are experiencing it.
Yeah, I mean, it is really crazy. And I must say it has been really hard on us, because before COVID hit, there were talks that companies wanted to take us over and due diligence done, and then everything froze up and we had nothing, and companies froze money. And in those dark moments, it is where you have to pick yourself up and think extra hard of how can you apply your technologies to fields that are now opening up. And one of those are, for example, the COVID testing, or how do you use your kind of technology in these fields and give a new direction or a new application area that may have not been there before. But these are the dark times that tenacity counts, absolutely.
And Massimo, you're on your marathon. You've started. You've just launched a company.
Yeah.
Set up a relationship with Bert at Budding Innovations. How about you? Has there been a pivoting, and has there been need for tenacity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I think about when, let's say, we started with the idea of using the technology we had developed in A-Star. We were really focused on developing one thing first. We were really focused on developing a product. We wanted to be a product company, a product startup, and with the listening to the customer and interviewing them and talk to them, and also thanks to the boot camps we attended. Then we realized that there was a smarter way to do this, and to actually have a hybrid business model that include both the service and product sales. And this was quite critical, because it allowed us. We had a prototype ready. We had a minimum viable product ready very early, but we were just sitting a bit there and waiting to develop it further, while we could actually already use this minimum viable product to do a service. And that's what we did, and that turned out to be a very good strategy. So in this sense, there was this pivoting from a product only to an hybrid business model. The other pivoting that I found very interesting was that we initially were very much focused on cosmetic manufacturers, and we soon understood that who is very much interested, even maybe more than the cosmetic manufacturers, in what we do is the chemical industry and the ingredient suppliers that supplies the ingredients to the cosmetic manufacturers. So there was this kind of pivoting in terms of the customer target, at least the initial customer target, that came out from listening to the customers, basically. If I may elaborate on tenacity, I really want to emphasize this: listen to the customer. Sometimes you actually that's all you need, and sometimes customer who have on the long run they were interested at the beginning, but they were not interested after, and you may actually feel a bit like, okay, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? It turns out you have to be persistent in that and understand better what they need, so that you can address their needs better with your technology, if you can. Yeah.
So Massimo, your pivot, as you described initially, was kind of a business model pivot. So that leads into my next question: is the importance of the team.
Right.
all startups are really, investors evaluate you basically on your team. And it's important to have a balanced team of technical expertise, business expertise, operational expertise. And you build your team around a CPO, CEO, COO, or whatever CXO that you may want to define. And both you and Sascha are scientists, but you've needed a business partner. And I know with you, it's been Bert from Budding Innovation who's joined you now. Can you describe that process of starting to grow your team, and how do you work together, and therefore how do you make these business pivots?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I have to say the team the initial part of the team was me and Sriram Gopu, and we have worked together side by side in the lab for days and nights to develop the technologies. But of course, that is not enough, let's say, and you need, as you say, a business partner. Now, I do have business development experience besides my scientific background, but in our case, we really needed someone who had, first of all, done already a bit of entrepreneurship, but also who had the look out into the corporate world, the large multinational world. My experience was more focused on the small, medium enterprise. So we met Bert, and actually it was through you, Howard. You introduced me to to Bert during one of the bootcamp organized at A-Star Central, where you were teaching, and you recommended him for regulatory consulting, and he was also one of the mentors of the bootcamp. So since then, we have been working together in building REVIVO Biosystems, and it's already 2.5 years now. He brings in all his domain knowledge, his experience in the cosmetic and fast-moving consumer goods, and it is very critical to also be able to negotiate with the big multinational company in the beginning. When you are a researcher with a bit of experience in the medium enterprise, you may not be able to do this hard negotiation. So it brought that. So I think from our point of view, the teams we really complement each other. Sriram brings together his expertise in 3D cell culture, stem cells, biology. Bert brings in his experience in the corporate world as an entrepreneur and a business developer. And I bring a little bit of both, but the scientific background, a bit of business development one. So we really have a good team there.
Very good. And Sascha, I know you work with Philip. Actually, Philip started working on the project when you attended one of our boot camps, I think, way back when. And you guys developed a great team together. Could you share a little bit about how that relationship works out, and what's the strengths and weaknesses of it, and all those things?
Yeah, absolutely. Our start goes back to the smart bootcamp for sure. That was the time I realized as a researcher I do not speak business language. That's the time when I realized, okay, there's definitely need in my team of business knowledge. When I realized I need help on that case, and it was the right choice to include a business person right from the start, because it begins with the language between you and your customer, and it ends with contractual things where we as a scientist simply have no clue, or sell ourselves short, or do not really know how to position ourselves and how to communicate. So the whole story of communication between the business world and science is a complete different world. And the easiest to learn that is from people who are in that field. So I quickly realized that having a person with business expertise and the communication skills in business are critical. And I absolutely agree with Massimo. It starts from contractual things where you would not understand as a scientist, or not know the pitfalls in it, or you would selling your technology short. But it also comes, and then the individual communication between a customer and you. How do you communicate them? How do you speak their language? And I give you one example. When I started this, I had 20 slides about technology and no one's interested in that. No one is interested in your technology And now that slide is one slide in a whole a business development plan, or in a whole presentation, where technology doesn't matter. It's the back, it's the business that matters, that you create around the technology. And no one really cares so much about what is the fine print of that technology, that we scientists are so happy about. So I think that was absolutely key, and knowing that and having a broad team of different expertise and different viewpoints.
Very good. So team is important, and you guys are both solving that and moving forward in a wonderful way. Let me ask both of you this question. What is the, this is a journey, and there's no way of mapping that ahead of time. So what was the greatest challenge that you experienced? And what was the greatest, failure that you experienced? And can you share, one or two of those with the audience? Massimo, can you go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I mean, as my experience is rather short, as I said, but I would say that one of the greatest challenge we had, in this venture when we started is it was the licensing agreement. It took really a long time to get it in, to get it done, to negotiate it. It meant a little bit of opportunity lost along the way. So that was a very big challenge to overcome. Fortunately, we found an agreement that satisfied all parties, and it went, and now we can move forward. I think from our side now, the next one is really this year, which was really the year where we started our fundraising campaign, and COVID happened, and everything everything has been a bit delayed, and fundraising was slowed down. But the good thing is, as I said before, that we have is that we can already generate a bit of revenue and to have services from customers. So that helped to compensate for that fundraising that didn't, it's taking a bit slower, a bit more time to come in. Yeah, the failures, I mean, I think it's a little bit early to say failures. I mean, right now failures are more like, okay, the one that I felt more painful is when I lost a couple of customers because of the long time it took to start being operational and having the licensing agreement in place. So that I consider a bit as a failure, because losing an opportunity with a customer is very painful for me.
Okay, thank you, Massimo. Sascha?
Yeah, for us, I think the way we started is we developed a new type of spectroscopy systems from the lab, right? And that was then pushed towards the market. So the greatest challenge in all of that is to find that product market fit. Where do you really go with a new technology that has not been built before? So where do you push that? That has a bit of a challenge then to decide on what is your minimum viable product that is in there. That has also changed along the way, because initially, like I mentioned, we thought we built infrared sensors. Then we realized the supplies are not easy, and we can't sell it everywhere. Also, when I look at failures, I wouldn't call them failures, but let's call them difficulties or setbacks. And those are things that come in from manufacturability. So we developed something in the lab, then transferring that out of the lab into some industrial processes. There are a lot of unforeseen difficulties and setbacks that take you much longer than you anticipate. Of course, initially you always, as a scientist, you think a certain way and then it doesn't come another. And the example is, we thought we built the fastest gas sensor and now we end up measuring skin, right, for cosmetics. So this is where these setbacks or things change along the way. But I wouldn't call them failures. You learn with every of these things, you learn, and you look back and you change the direction a little and move ahead.
Right. I guess with any kind of product development, and you both have a core product, developing it is, to me, it's like peeling an onion. And every layer you peel, there's a new set of problems that you didn't anticipate. So you peel the next layer. And of course, when you peel onions, you end up crying a lot. So we all experience as entrepreneurs. There's a very good question here I'd like to jump to that one of our members of the audience raised. You both use grant money as much as you could. I know both of you use the Smart Innovation Grant. you used A-Star Accelerate funding and expertise. So the question they're asking is, what's the right time to spin off a company? Do you need a customer? What's the initial funding that you need to kickstart your company? So who wants to start? Massimo, you want to go first, and then Sascha?
Yeah, I can try. No, I think it's a very good question. And to be honest, I don't think there is a straight answer to that. There is not. I don't think it works the same way for everybody. And someone has a team already built from the research project and already has a business guy who is involved in that project. And then it might be convenient to do it immediately if there is already a minimum viable product. The suggestion I really listen to the advisor, to people who I trust, and when sometimes I've been told, maybe it's a bit early, see if you can get a grant or something, keep developing the technology a bit further, because once you're out there, it's a jungle, it's a tough world, and you don't have the lab and the wet labs and so on. So try to do these things, and that's why we went for some grants as well. I think I would say you have at least one or two people as a team. That's a requirement, I would say. At least two people in the team that wants to do that, and you have a prototype that function and that you can use at least either as for doing some service, so you can generate some from my experience, generate some revenue, or that at least you can showcase as a minimum viable product so that it builds confidence. I think these are the two main things where I would say, and then I have a clear business plan. So this part I will have to give it a lot to the smart boot camps and A-Star Central, because through these boot camps that we attended and the training, you really learn the tools that then they're going to help you through this journey. And so have this in place, including a business, at least a business model, maybe not the business plan, but at least a business model well defined.
And Sascha, what's your advice to the listeners about what's the right time to spin off a company?
Yeah, I would also agree with what Massimo was saying, is drag it out as far as you can. The minimum requirement is to have a demo system that you can pack under your armpit and run to the customer and demonstrate it. And having an idea of at least a beachhead market, where to carry it to, I think is key. And the longer I think you can de-risk your technology by staying in the safe haven of a research facility and getting to that minimum viable product. I'm not sure if it needs to be the minimum viable product, but at least to the demo system that showcases the technology's capabilities and the directions of it, to educate your future customers of what is possible with it, is a minimum. And then I also agree, the team should be at least set up and committed for long term. It doesn't help you if you run out, start a company, and in half a year that the guys run away. So it needs to be clear. There's a long-term commitment to it. There's a dedicated team behind it. And that is then also translating into what your customers see and what your customer face. So I think those are the minimum. It's a team, it's the product or the demo system, and the rest is dragging it out until you have that, or staying back until you have that sorted, and the beachhead market. Yeah.
Sascha, I think that's great advice. As we know from looking at the statistics, 42% of companies fail because they produce a product that the market doesn't want. So getting that product market fit is really, really key. And actually, it's very difficult to raise any substantial capital unless you have the team in place, because the investors look at the team. The investors know that they don't have the make to make the product. So they want to have a team that's going to be resilient, that's going to be able to pivot when they have to, that's going to be able to execute to make it happen. So good points both of you made. Sascha, there's a question here for you from the audience. How did you transition from the first product to the final product? And what was the key driver and decision process in changing your mind to move from the original idea? So that's a challenging question.
Yeah, no, I mean, how did we change? Actually, along the way, when I started, I thought as a scientist, everyone would tear our infrared spectrometers from us and would like them. But when we looked into customers, it was not the case, because simply the whole supply chain structure was too difficult. The acquisition of these sensors, we could not sell to China, and at that time we had a lot of Chinese interest for infrared gas sensing systems. So we realized that this is not a trivial sale in that case. And at the same time, we pushed towards shorter and shorter wavelength in our spectral recovery, and we realized we can also achieve a simpler process, that is color measurement, as an example. A precise measurement of surface colors or reflection of colors. And interesting enough, in one of the conferences, we presented this little pen spectrometer and our first prototype. And then the cosmetics industry stopped by and said, "Hey, wow, that's interesting. Can you measure skin color?" And from then we started realizing, okay, there might be a simpler way away from the infrared spectroscopy. That's difficult B2B, more towards still a B2B business, but with a simpler system to measure cosmetic products. It came through talking with the industry, to presenting at conferences and realizing there might be a simpler way to sell these devices. We also realized that the spectroscopy systems we were pushing were too expensive at the end of the day and too difficult to sell. So it comes through your discussion with the customer.
I guess that's an important point. It's that 360-degree vision, isn't it? They're constantly looking around at customers, competition, technology developments, and really angle in on what's the best product market fit. And you know, you've done a great job in doing that, Sascha. We have a question and answer board here. So anyone that has any additional questions, please ask them. Meanwhile, let me ask another question to you guys. Since we have an audience here of scientists and engineers who are themselves thinking of maybe going along this journey of being an entrepreneur, what's the most important single thing that you learned along this journey as an entrepreneur scientist that you'd like to share with the audience?
I
Sascha,
can
you want to go first?
Yeah, I think I have to start with stay positive, think truth, and just see what is working, see what is not working, and take that on what is not working, plan it out and change it. Even if your ego sometimes is connected to something, you want to really make it work in a certain way, you have to step back and see what is working along the way, and change and move on and move towards what the customer is requiring. And in all of that, it's a constant up and down. It's a rough water, and you always have to continue swimming with a smile. I would say that is key.
Very good. How about Massimo? What's the most important thing you'd like to convey to the audience?
Yeah, I cannot agree more with Sascha, especially about swimming with a smile. I mean, it's that's really what it takes. And the other thing I would say is to really, I mean, I think we both emphasize this a lot, but we really have to listen to the customer. I think that's the most important thing to learn. Listen to the customer, and the most important thing is try to get the customer and once you have it, give them the best customer experience you can. The other thing is that this is a long run. And I think one of the things I learned is that from the moment you switch from a researcher to an entrepreneur, from an idea to the spin-off, you never stop negotiating. So you really have to switch your mindset that everything you do, the moment you have a startup, it's very often a negotiation. You never stop negotiating.
So we have a lot of good questions that have just popped up on relating to customers. One is, can you share your experience in landing the first customer? It's not easy to convince customers to try new solutions and also to form a startup or working with a startup. So, Sascha, do you want to take that question first? What was it like, you know, landing the first customer for one of your spectrum meter chips?
Yeah, for us, it was hard to land the first customer. It was not an easy sale because spectroscopy in general is not an easy field, and it's not easily applied to a certain application. So the way we started this whole landing a customer was through a constant collaboration. So there was a probable idea by a customer how to use something in a certain field. So we started selling what we call proof of concept studies, where we work together with that customer and showcasing that this type of product will help them for what they're looking for. And this whole discussion happens through being out in the field, through referrals, and then to picking up the thread and following that lead. And it is a constant collaboration with that customer. Actually, you need to educate them in that field. You need to showcase what your technology can contribute to their needs, and also to, work and have feedback from that customer. So sometimes it is hard because you speak a different language, and that needs to be, it needs a lot of time and effort to continue that conversation. Yeah, it's exciting once someone signs up for you to work with you, and then the work actually starts, where you really have to deliver in a certain time frame solution for that customer.
Very good. And Massimo, what's your experience? What was it like nailing that first customer?
Yeah, my experience is that it takes time, and even if you try to share with different customers what you do and what your technology is about, what really matters at the end is if you can really address the need that the customer has in that moment, and if what you do aligns somehow with what the company, this customer, especially with large multinational company, if it aligns with their R&D development, with their business development. So you have to find this ideal customer that kind of you can work side by side. And for us, it took a little bit, but it started with a casual, networking, basically engagement, and then it became like we got invited to pitch in front of a team of people, both researchers, both technical people and business people, and from that it moved pretty fast into becoming a service project, and then to a sale, basically. So it is a great feeling. That's all I can say when you actually manage to land that first customer. It's a great feeling because it builds yourself more confidence, and it builds confidence when you go and pitch to investors. It's very critical.
I may say one thing. It is always quite easy initially to raise interest, but then to get that customer to start something with you, and to get over that hurdle of trust that there is something they can get out of or they can use for their specific needs, that takes a lot of massaging and a lot of effort and time. Absolutely. I mean, time is there, and it takes longer than we anticipate most of the times, because you need to get to the people, you need to get to the decision makers that then sign off a certain project. So it takes effort and time and diligence to get there.
Sascha, maybe you can expand on that, because another question that just popped up. What is the single most important ingredient in forming long-term relationships with your customers, past, present, and future? Trust?
I would guess building trust, taking them serious, continue the conversation, and being honest, right? And just saying those are difficulties you're facing, this is how we're gonna solve it, being transparent to as much as you can be. And I think it is in that constant conversation, and I realized with the people we actually met, that means we flew there, we met the people, as an example, in Japan or somewhere else, that gives, people need to see your face. And that's maybe the difference between these Zoom meetings now. They need to see you in person, and they need to see the device. They need to hold it in their hands. They need to be able to measure with it. And that forms then this trust and this bond that goes beyond. But it does not work always. Sometimes you realize this is the wrong product for a specific need. But I think, yeah, it takes time and effort to get there and being there.
Well, time is starting to run to an end, but I have one last question for both of you. Since you're in the middle of your journeys, would you do it again? What was the best and the worst part of the experience? Sascha, you want to go first, and then Massimo?
Yeah, of course. I got a lot of gray hair, let me tell you that. So I'd say yes, I would.
Yeah, when I first knew you, you didn't have any gray hair.
Not at all. Yeah. Yeah. I think next time we meet, I don't have hair at all. But
it's not a problem for me.
Yeah, but yes, I would do it again, but I think I would be more cautious. I would plan it out better. And what I would do is I would earlier include more industrial partners that can help you along the way, rather than pushing all of your knowledge to the extreme and being slower. I think it's better to have an early contribution or early collaboration with someone who's in the field, who knows that field, and work with those.
Very good. And Massimo, would you
Yeah,
do it again?
I would do it again also because I didn't start a long time ago. So yes, I would do it again. And also because the emotion of creating something like this, that, also that you can think, potentially leaves behind you, it's something that can work at some point also without you, that's a great feeling that you get there. Yeah, the worst part is probably the pressure you're under along this journey. And the pressure comes from everywhere, from, you put pressure on your personal life, on your family life, pressure on everything around. It comes from everything around you, and you put it on people around you. So that's the hard part. It's not an easy path, I have to say. You have to be really ready. You have to be, first of all, be able to endorse change all the time. If you are not a person who can endorse change, maybe it's not the right thing for you. And you have to be ready to go through these amazing, hypes, ups, and also this very, very, very hard.
Yeah, it's a pressure cooker for sure. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, we're fortunately, I'm sure there's many more questions that we would like to ask, but we've come to the end of our webinar. I'd like everyone to put their hands together to thank both Sascha and Massimo for their presentations and for the journey that they're on. And we look forward to catching up with you in a year and learning even more success and progress. And you both share the enthusiasm and excitement about the journey that you're on in the startup. And we hope that this the seminar has really inspired many of you to embark on a startup journey. At the same time, giving you a realistic feeling for what you're getting yourself into. It certainly is a difficult but an exciting process. Some of us actually get addicted to this thing and become serial entrepreneurs. So needless, as you go forward as scientists and as entrepreneurs, we encourage you to challenge yourself, because growth often happens outside of your comfort zone. A-Start Central and SMART were both pleased to organize this event, whatever it takes. We hope to have a series of these where we have scientists, entrepreneurs sharing their experience going forward, so that we can have a better understanding of the startup landscape here in Singapore. We certainly would appreciate your feedback, and I think both Susan and Candy, who have been so instrumental behind the scene and putting this event together. Please provide them with your comments of whether this was a useful webinar and whether you'd like us to continue this as a series. So have a great weekend ahead, and remember to keep on trying to do whatever it takes. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.